the alarms on the sterilizer don't always go off every single time there's an issue. So checking those, making sure those parameters are being met. There can always be errors. And I've seen it before where the sterilizer was saying everything was good on the parameters and then the visual indicators were not changing. So there was a problem, but the machine wasn't catching it.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now, it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this week's episode of First Case, we are speaking with Adam Okada, a clinical education specialist at Healthmark, a Getinge company, and we are going to be talking about the specifics of our indicators and the tape and learning how these items communicate to us that our trays are sterile. We'll also learn what they do and what they don't tell us. It really is fascinating stuff. So, one, always make sure that you are checking your trays for an indicator when you open them and don't go anywhere. We will be right back with Adam Okada.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Joining us now is Adam Okada, a clinical education specialist at Healthmark, a Getinge company. And Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You and I actually met years ago during a Beyond Clean conference. And for those of you listening who may not know, Beyond Clean is one of our sister brands and podcasts, and they focus on the sterile processing space, which has been really good for me as I've worked through this season that is all Sterile Processing 101, and I have leaned on my Beyond Clean connections to bring in the best experts so that we can really have a deep dive into sterile processing. But anyway, that's just how I got my connections for this season. But Adam, you came to mind as I was thinking about, okay, who am I going to interview? Who are we going to talk to? And I'm like, I got to talk to Adam. I remember Adam from the Beyond Clean days. So I'm excited to get to talk to you again today. And today we are going to go deeper, I guess, into our trays. Like, how do we know that it's sterile? What are the details that are being communicated to us by those indicators, by the tapes, even the filters for our trays, all of that stuff? There's a lot more to it than just popping a tray and throwing it on the back table. And I think sometimes in the OR, we just take that for granted. So that is the gist of our conversation today. But before we get started, Adam, please go ahead and just introduce yourself to everyone and tell us what you've been up to since the Beyond Clean days.
Sure. So my name is Adam Okada. I'm a clinical education specialist at Healthmark, like you mentioned. And I've been in sterile processing for about 20 years. Worked in pretty much every area of sterile processing. I used to build case carts, tech on the floor, frontline tech for about 10 years, and then moved up into management and education. And of course, worked with Hank and the boys over at Beyond Clean and Lynn's and everybody. So it's some fun days there. But now I'm just doing education, traveling around, doing assessments, speaking, that kind of thing. And then I focus on our virtual education, which is Healthmark Academy, which is academy.hmark.com, shameless plug, and our webinars and podcasts.
No worries about shameless plugs. I might actually ask you more about that later so we can make sure people can get some more information if they're really struggling with the sterile processing concepts. Because one of the reasons that actually motivated me to do this season, is that we just in the OR just really don't get a good idea of everything that goes into the sterile processing side. We just, like to point fingers and get mad when things aren't right, but we don't have a good grasp of the science, of the training, of the education, of the technology, all of the things that go on in that department. And along with that, when we take certification exams, when we have to study and they ask us all of these questions about sterile processing, and we don't know because it's just not something that we are taught. So these conversations are helpful. So yes, we will bring up Healthmark Academy here in a little bit again to help people have another place to find some more information for sure. But as we get into this conversation, I think the very first thing we need to talk about is just why is it so important that we not only have sterile instruments, but that we verify their sterility?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, what indicators are is an indication of sterility, and to make sure that items are safe to use on patients. I can tell you I've been through personally at facilities that I've been at where indicators were not read correctly. Things were taken unsterile up to the OR. They were used on patients in the OR. So those terrifying types of things can be, yes, it is very scary. So yeah, it happens, unfortunately. And so that's really what those are there for, those visual indications that tell you, hey, it's like a red flag, something is wrong if those things aren't changing.
So each of us has a role to play in that, though. Sterile processing has their role in it, and then the OR has theirs. So my understanding, and let's make it go a little broader so we can all really understand everything what is sterile processing doing when it comes to verifying sterility, and then we'll jump over to what the OR's responsibility is.
Sure. I mean, the first thing that sterile processing needs to do when an item comes out of the sterilizer is to verify the parameters are met on the actual machine itself. So they're looking at their printouts and they're seeing that all those parameters have been met. They should be verifying those and then signing off on it. And then we have the visual indications. So those type 1 indicators that are externally on the tray, they should be examining those. They should be looking for integrity, really just to make sure that the integrity of the package is good and that the indicators have changed. So we know, okay, now this can be safe to send up to the OR. Again, with those parameters, if biologicals change, all those kinds of things. So those are all indications that can tell somebody, okay, this load is now ready to go up to the OR. And then on the flip side, on the OR side, it's another verification. So when those go into point of use, there has to be that verification that those indicators have changed. Again, I've seen it happen where those indicators are missed, and there's so many of them. There's external, there's internal, all of those things have to be verified before they're used.
Yeah, and I actually just recently lived through a mistake. I was on a mission trip in Honduras, and we were doing surgery all week, and we were getting set up for one of our cases. I mean, yes, we are in an OR in another country, and so you're kind of out of sorts, but at the end of the day, like, all the same things, apply. We're still checking our trays. We're still making sure they're sterile. We're still doing all the things. And I don't know. It was one of those cases where we were trying to get turned over and get the next patient in the room. It's funny. You're on a mission trip and you're still rushing and turning over, right? And I had a bunch of people in the room opening stuff. So I have no idea who opened this particular item because I know it was not me. But somebody opened a blue wrapped item that actually had never turned. It had never gone through the sterilizer. And the only reason we found out was in America, in the States, in the OR, when we have a blue wrap item, we check the blue wrap and we throw it away. In Honduras, they do not. The blue wrap gets checked and then it gets sent back to sterile processing and they reuse it because they don't have the resources that we have here in order to just throw blue wrap away. So they will reuse blue wrap multiple times, take all the tape off and reuse it. And that's a conversation for another day. We're not going to talk about that, but we are going to talk about the fact that because the blue wrap went back to sterile processing where they were going to pull the tape, they caught it. And sterile processing caught that tape had not turned. And they came running back to the OR and like, whoa, hold the phone. We cannot do anything else. And I had a lot of respect for that team because that was a lot of stuff for us to pull off the back table, to throw away, to start over and get set up again. And that was the right thing to do. And they insisted, of course, that we do the right thing. And so it's just that reminder that we can be doing this all the time, day in and day out. And then suddenly you're in a hurry, you're not looking. And it's important to never let that, I guess, keep us from actually seeing what our tape, what our filters, what our indicators are telling us about these trays. You brought up something though, and I'm curious, what are those parameters on our steam sterilizers that have to be met in order to say that our trays are sterile?
Temperature, pressure, those kinds of things, making sure that the exposure time is correct. If you're running a 4-minute exposure at 270 degrees, you have to make sure that all those parameters have been met. And it's really actually an important part of this. Just like the visual indicators that we have to verify, if we're not verifying those printouts, we could be missing something. And the alarms on the sterilizer don't always go off every single time there's an issue. So checking those, making sure those parameters are being met. There can always be errors. And I've seen it before where the sterilizer was saying everything was good on the parameters, and then the visual indicators were not changing. So there was a problem, but the machine wasn't catching it. All those things are important. They're all steps in the process, the Swiss cheese thing where we're all checking certain things. We have these inspection points, but if we all miss it, that's when
the holes line up.
Happen.
Yeah, exactly.
The holes line up, exactly.
So back in the days of flashing, we're not allowed to flash anything anymore, although I know it does happen in places, but really we're not allowed to. And but we had to read those printouts, and I'm trying to go through all the numbers and all the printouts on the machine that it just, to make sure we hit that, 270 degrees or 273 degrees, that high temperature for the amount of time that met it. And that's a lot of numbers on that printout. And you're going through and trying to read through it all. And I realize the experts in sterile processing get used to reading those tapes and seeing all that information. But it's overwhelming when I see everything that thing prints out, and I got to look through it all and make sure that, we've hit the right numbers for the right amount of time. All the things are good so that we can move on and use this instrument. But that's
it is a lot. I even remember the old days of, the little, it was like an earthquake meter where you would see lines going up and down for pressure changes and temperature changes. And it was like a big circular graph that you would have to interpret. So I remember those. So this is better when we can have numbers that we can remember.
Yeah, that's before my time. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm old. Yeah.
No. Experienced. That's it. Experienced. That's all we're going to say.
Experience. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So you also mentioned something too, and I want to go into this much deeper because this is one that we don't think about the differences in our indicators, and our indicators are different based on where they are on the trays, and they're telling us different things. So can you, let's just start with you mentioned class 1 indicators. Well, there's multiple classes. Can we talk about the different kinds of indicators?
Absolutely. A class 1, that's your external indicator. That's essentially saying it's going to change color in the presence of heat. So it's not telling you things are sterile inside. It's just an indication that has gone through a process, which again, it got hot, it changed color. So your indicator tape across your wraps, the little dots on the pouches, the dots on the rigid container locks, all those would be your class 1 indicators. And then you're going to get into let's just jump to class 5 because that's our multi-integrating indicators. That's going to have multiple parameters that are going to be a higher indication of sterility because they have to go through certain parameters in order for them to pass. And then, of course, you have your class 6 emulating indicators, but those will only pass in the presence of a specific cycle. So they are cycle-specific indicators. 2 is Bowie-Dick. 3 and 4 are really not typically used because a class 3 is only 1 in parameter. A class 4 is 2 parameters, but class 5 is that multi-integrating indicator. That's the typical ones you see in SPDs and in the OR, that those will change in the presence of multiple parameters of sterilization. So those are the classes of indicators.
So I heard a different word, and this actually came up as I studied for my CNOR exam many, many years ago. And I didn't know this word compared to indicator. I just thought they were all indicators, but there's actually another word out there, an integrator, and that's something different. So what is that and how is that connected?
Yeah, that's the typical indicators we see is those class 5 integrating indicators that have multiple parameters that have to be met in order for them to pass. So those are typically what you'll see inside of trays. They're a little bit different than those emulating indicators in that those are cycle specific, and integrator is just meeting certain parameters of sterilization, temperature, time, pressure, all those things for them to pass.
Okay. And so those things, we see them outside our trays, we see them inside our trays, but then we also have filters that are in our trays, but usually they have something on them as well that is giving us some information beyond just that we're checking the filter to make sure that it's got, the integrity is there as far as making sure there's no holes or anything in the filter. But there's information on the filter too.
Yeah, sometimes there is like an indicator dot. Typically, that would be another class 1 indicator saying that it's gone through a process, and you should be able to. Sometimes you can even see that from the outside of the tray where you can see that now that's changed color. Not all the filters have that, but some of them do.
Yeah, I had somebody actually panic one time when we pulled a filter out of a tray because there was this brown dot on the filter. Like, oh, we can't use that. Something's wrong. I'm like, no, that is actually an indicator. It's supposed to be there. But if you don't know that a filter could have that on it, it very much could look like some kind of staining or rust, or I don't even how a filter like that could get that dirty or something. But if you don't know to look for it, you can be taken by surprise that it's there, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's, knowing your product and what you have at your facility is going to be really important because, again, those filters sometimes do have the color change dots on them. The indicator lock, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They should, if that's your external lock mechanism, should have some type of dot on it. And the pouches, too. Sometimes I've seen them with the dots on the outside of the pouch, and sometimes I've seen them without. So all those things are up for interpretation based on the product you're using and knowing the product, what you're looking for, and especially with the indicators, because color changes. Some go from like red to yellow, some go from yellow to blue, or yellow to purple, and it's all kinds of different colors now. So you got to know your products. Unfortunately, at each different facility, they're going to be different.
Yeah, what that means is pay attention in the staff meeting when they tell you that a product has changed. Hopefully they tell you that a product has changed and you're not just surprised when you're in there opening trays one day and something is different. But, I really think that it would be very helpful. And maybe there are ORs and sterile processing departments that do this. They haven't done it in mine, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen out in the real world elsewhere. But it would be very helpful just to have a couple hours with our people when they are new to the department, new to the OR, or even a refresher, maybe in a staff meeting throughout the year that just goes over this. Here are the products that we use. This is what it's telling you. And here's what it looks like so that we don't have people who panic when they see a brown dot on a filter. What our low temperature indicators are going to look like versus what our indicators are supposed to look like, out of our rigid containers or our blue wrapped items. It's very important. And you sit there and you question, is this right? Is it not right? I know with the low temperature ones, sometimes I'm looking at it going, okay, it says the color should start this way and then end this way. Okay, we're good. Because and then suddenly you get a new product and the color changes and then I'm completely lost again. I don't have any clue at all.
Yeah, I mean, that happened to us because we had the STERAD and the V-Pro in the same hospital, and we were using different indicators for each of those, which, again, that was a whole confusing mess that, we really needed like sort of a universal indicator that worked on both of them. But we had these indicators that were red to yellow, and then the other one was yellow to purple or something like that. So then it was yellow was good for one and bad for another.
Yes,
and
we had that too.
Very
confusing.
Yeah.
Yes, that is so confusing. Consistency is a great thing. But then also, like I said, like working together to make sure all the staff are on the same page as to what's working. And I realize there are maybe recalls or there are supply shortages or other things, back orders where you end up getting a different product temporarily. And you just have to roll with it. But communication is definitely key in making sure
visual
everyone
indications
knows.
Yeah, I would say give people posters. That's what we used to do for our OR staff, especially if there was a changeover. We're going from this indicator to this indicator. Here's how you know it's going to be sterile. Those are all very, very, that's actually essential. It's vital so that people know when items are sterile.
Right. Okay, so then if we have all of these things on our tray, we have all of this, honestly, all of these communication methods that are telling us the outside of the tray, it has at least gone through the process. It has been exposed to the temperature, to the heat. And then the inside of the tray is telling us that those parameters were actually met. What else do we need to do when we're checking our packaging or our tray integrity before we just start putting stuff on the back table?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question because indicators are really that. They're an indication of sterility. They are not proof of sterility. They're not saying that this item is 100% sterile inside and every item inside is sterile. There's a lot of different factors involved with that. An indicator can change and you could still have problems in the tray. But the integrity on the outside of the tray is just as important. If the packaging that it's in is not, if it's compromised on its way to point of use, then it doesn't matter that those indicators have changed, right? Those indicators will change, but your item will be unsterile because the packaging integrity is bad. So you have to check your tape to make sure that that seal, and all of those are tamper evidence seals, or you're just basically showing that things haven't been tampered with. Those wraps haven't been opened up. The rigid container locks are in place, so you know that tray hasn't been popped open. The seals on your pouches, all of those things are showing that those items have made it to point of use and their integrity is still good. And for things like filters, for things like wraps, if there's holes in them, or if there's tears in them, or if they've been dragged across, a metal rack and now they have drag marks on the bottom, all of those things can compromise sterility. So I think that storage is really a kind of the forgotten part of sterile processing. We talk about cleaning a lot. We talk about the sterilization process, the inspection process, and how important that is. But then it's almost like it comes out of the sterilizer, we forget about it. But those factors are critical to get that sterile item to the point of use.
I could not have asked you to set up our next episode any better than you just did, because next episode we are talking to Melinda Elabari all about storage and all about packaging and all of the like real science that goes into how our instruments should be stored, what's going on with our packaging, what's it made out of, and what is it like approved for, broadly, of course, what it's approved for, but like what we're using it for and how we should be using it correctly. So that was a great setup for our next episode. Awesome.
I tried to set her up well. I tried to.
Man, I think you really did. That was great. But it is true. And like, as we've gone through this season, and as I've talked to everyone, as we've moved through this reprocessing life cycle, it is crazy to think just how much goes into ensuring our instruments are safe, ensuring that they're sterile. And then also how little credit I think that we oftentimes give our sterile processing staff for the work that they have to do and how much they have to know. Like, they are not given enough credit at all for what they're expected to, I don't think. And I'm sure you agree with me, but it's just not.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, this is my, like, if I have like a mission or a life's work, it's really going to be raising the profile of sterile processing, because it used to be viewed as an entry-level position. I think a lot of C-suites and hiring managers still think of it as this is an entry-level job. But the amount of science, the amount of technology they need to know, the amount of understanding of everything in the process, how detergents work, how they break down soils, all those kinds of things, those are things we need to know. And that's, I think, a very complex science that should be taken more seriously. In Europe, they call it the sterilization sciences.
Wow.
They're really called scientists, laboratory scientists, things like that have those titles as well. So it's really taken more seriously. And here in the U.S., unfortunately, we still see it as, well, somebody can just walk in off the street, high school education, will be able to start in sterile processing the next day. And it's just not that way anymore. There's so much that goes into it. So I appreciate you mentioning that, because that is definitely something.
You bring up such a good point too, because as long as we continue to view it as an entry-level position, as long as there are people out there who think it is nothing more than washing dishes, which we talked about already in our first episode and how insulting that is, because it is not true. But as long as there are people in leadership making decisions for staffing and for supporting our departments who think that, we're going to continue to have the issues that we see within our department and within getting our instruments to the OR, where things might not be correct, where there might be mistakes or problems because the people in the department don't understand, because they aren't being given the training and the education they need. Does that make sense? Does my train of thought make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's not an entry level position anymore. Yeah. There are months and months you need to go through of training and understanding and the why behind everything we do to really get into the department. And this is why we see mistakes happening. We talk about flexible scopes, shavers, all these kind of complex devices have so many steps that go into them. If you don't understand every part of this process, how those detergents work, how the sterilization process works, why things need to be open to the spray inside the washers, all of those factors will come into play, because that's how things get missed, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes. So this is excellent conversation as far as the value of the role of the sterile processing technician. And we don't, like I said, we just don't give them enough credit. So as we are wrapping up this conversation, when we think about our information that's outside of our trays, the information that's inside our trays, and all of the things that it's telling us, it really is, I would call it like a final line of defense as far as communicating what's going on with our trays. So why do you think it's so important that we continue to recognize that as a line of defense and see it as, a communication device for our trays before we use these instruments on our patients?
Well, I think you worded it perfectly. It's the last line of defense. You are the last person to see those instruments before they're going to be used on the patient. And so verifying that those things have been processed correctly and that those indicators are in place is a vital step in the process. And I know it's something that can be easy to skip. You're focusing on the surgeon, you're focusing on the patient, you're focusing on a lot of other things. And in sterile processing, it's the same way. When those instruments leave and go up to the storage area or go up to the OR, it's almost like out of sight, out of mind. We don't really look at them or check them, but checking for integrity, making sure those things are good, making sure those indicators have passed. All those things are, again, you are the last line of defense, and that patient is a person at their most vulnerable point. They are not able to defend themselves. They are under anesthesia, and they rely on us to do our jobs. And that's really what that last line of defense is for, is making sure that those things are safe to use.
Thank you very much. That is an excellent answer. And before we wrap the rest of this conversation up, I do want to give you an opportunity to share any other final thoughts. But I also want you to mention again the education that HealthMark offers. So if anybody is interested in finding out more, going deeper into any of this, where can they go to do that?
Yeah, academy.hmark.com. HealthMark Academy has dozens of CEs. So if you're looking for CE credit, all that stuff gets automatically sent to HSPA and applied to your account. But I think it's the last thing I'd want to say to SPD and OR colleagues out there is it's really on us to work together to make sure that these things are all working the way they're supposed to. Sterile processing needs to do their job, and the OR needs to do their job. And if everybody does their job, then the patients will have good outcomes at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adam. This was a very enjoyable conversation today.
Absolutely, it was. Thank you.
That was Adam Okada, a clinical education specialist at HealthMark, a Getting a company. And I know for myself, until I studied for my certification exam and the more I learned about all of the things that are going on in sterile processing, I had never put that much thought into what an indicator meant and all of the different information it was telling me based on its location, either outside or inside the tray. And there is so much that goes on with our indicators, and that, the class 5 integrator, and then the tapes and the filters and all of the things that are on our trays that are giving us valuable information. And it is easy for us to just take them for granted. We know they're supposed to be there, and we do know what we're looking for, but we don't always look. We just pop the tray and open the tray. And then, yes, we look for the indicator on the inside. And by the time we've gotten to the inside of the tray, we may have missed all of the information on the outside of the tray that's been trying to communicate something to us that we didn't see because we didn't examine the outside of our tray as well. And I don't think we always think about the science behind those strips, or behind the tape, or behind the stuff that's on our tray. But it really is fascinating. And I think that having a deeper understanding of what our indicators and our tape, what those filters are doing, what they're telling us, it will also help us be more vigilant, because we know what we're looking for and we know what we're supposed to see. So we can immediately catch something that it doesn't look right, something that's off, because we are that last line of defense before these trays reach our patients. And we don't want to use an instrument that's not sterile. We don't want to use anything on our patients that could compromise their safety. And we always want to ensure that what we're opening is safe for them. That's going to do it for today. Like Adam said earlier, there is so much information out there in the sterile processing world for education. HealthMark has their HealthMark Academy. Beyond Clean also has an entire CE page where you can go to beyondclean.net and then go to their CE events. And there are plenty of webinars and conferences and other things there that are approved not only for sterile processing, but also for nursing. So there are options for you to go there and to learn and to get CEs in the process to really broaden your understanding of what is going on in sterile processing. So take advantage of those free resources. HealthMark, Beyond Clean, take advantage of what they have to improve your learning, to improve your understanding of what's going on in the sterile processing department. It's going to make you a better person in the OR for sure. Next week, we're continuing the conversation as we talk about sterile packaging, storage, and shelf life. I promise you're going to learn more than you thought possible next week, so stay tuned. On behalf of all of our team, thanks for listening to this week's episode of First Case.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.